Hi everyone. This evening we're going to be chatting about gender equality and the value of STEM. And if we think about it in terms of our society, it's a really, really complex situation and a really complex topic in which to discuss. So gender equality might be related to religion or culture or patriarchy or traditions, beliefs, family values, perceptions. And so it's really interwoven into the fabric of our society. It's really interesting in terms of why our children leave schools. Most of the children who leave schools are girls. So lots of it relates to poverty, that they have to care for ill parents, care for younger siblings, for pregnancy reasons. And the interesting thing is that the Gauteng Department of Health announced a couple of weeks ago that 23,000 young teenagers in Gauteng between April 2020 and March 2021 fell pregnant. That's really a large number of girls. And 934 of those girls were between the ages of 10 and 14. So for me, the question is, how do we keep our young children, especially our girls, in school? What can we do to actually assist them? And then when we think about STEM and women and their careers in STEM, well, you might say, so what is STEM? STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And in recent years, we've been calling it STEAM. So you'll see one of the guests I have this evening is the STEAM manager. But some people are even referring it to as STREAM, where they're adding robotics as a separate entity. Tonight, it's actually looking at these areas. And in 2019, the UN research report said Africa had the lowest number of women researchers in engineering and technology. But this year, Benin, the tiny country in Africa, had the greatest number of women engineers. So that's really exciting. Women from a fourth industrial revolution industry are still in the minority, where we're looking at globally 28% of the graduates in engineering are women and 40% in computer sciences and informatics, and 22% in artificial intelligence. The interesting thing, though, is that in South Africa, we are the only country in the top 20 countries globally who have women professionals in artificial intelligence. And our percentage is sitting at 23% of these graduates are women. That's really exciting. So we can do it, and we need to motivate our children. Globally, if we look at the big corporates and see the numbers of women in leadership roles, both technical and generally in leadership, the percentage is still much smaller than what the other percentage is in terms of each company. So we need to say, how do we get our girls involved? How do we actually change the perception that women can lead in these areas? In 2017 in South Africa, only 5% of the ICT company CEOs were women. In South Africa, if we look at our percentage of computer science graduates, which is sitting at 22%, only 2.9% of them receive jobs in the field. So how are we actually helping our girls? Globally, as women, we still make less money than the men do per dollar. So how do we begin this conversation? And that's what we're going to do tonight. So I am super excited to be chatting tonight to Gafieza and to Cheryl. So good evening, ladies. I am so excited that you are joining me here this evening and that you're going to be sharing your ideas with us. Cheryl, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, hi everybody. I bring you greetings from Penreach, Mpumalanga. I'm the STEAM Learning Manager, and we build capacity. And my particular role is building capacity in the STEAM area. Just bringing in science, technology, engineering, maths, and embracing it into the arts. And yeah, I have this wonderful, exciting journey of just building capacity in our community. So that's me.
So in terms, Gafieza seems to be frozen. So if I think of you in terms of what you do in terms of your STEAM, and it's a new project, you want to tell us about that and how you actually encourage your girls to participate as well?
Okay, we believe that it's having an impact in our ECD, starting bringing it in from an early age is the biggest impact. So a lot of our focus is in from ECD up to primary school. That's where we started. It's a new program, so the program's 9 months old, but from ECD, so from our littles, from 3-4-year-old right up to grade 6. That's the area we've been working in the last 9 months. But it's just been incredible to see. There's no differentiation between girls, boys, and it's so wonderful to see that excitement. For particularly in what we're doing at the moment is the coding and robotics, but just to see that interest is so natural from such an early age, you know, and you don't want to lose that, and I think that's what gets lost along the road, and so we want to encourage it and just grow it and nurture it through the years growing up, so that it's seen as a field that's promising for young girls.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
So Gafieza, hello. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, Karen. Hi, Cheryl. I'm so sorry. I don't know what was going on there, but technology was certainly giving me some evening glitches. So yes, I'm Gafieza Ismail. I'm from the Western Cape Education Department. I'm a Deputy Chief Education Specialist in the eLearning Directorate, and I'm responsible for eCulture, which is digital learning culture. And this really focuses around adoption, technology adoption in the classroom, in the school environment, in the learning environment. It's also really about classroom transformation, specifically about cyber safety, bringing about cyber wellness for our learners, as well as for our teachers, as well as for the school holistic environment. And also really importantly about pedagogical integration of technology. So that's me in a nutshell.
So if we just look at that role in terms of that, are there areas where you sometimes focus on helping girls or helping the children from a cyber safety point of view and creating an awareness from that kind of point of view?
Yes, absolutely. Just recently, we had completed a series called The Cyber Effect. This was an 8-part series, which you can also find on YouTube, and you also we will also be hosting it on our WCED portal, where you can find a number of resources. And the Cyber Effect was an 8-part series, episodes that focused around both from a pedagogical perspective of cyber safety, but also around strong awareness and strategies to implement cyber wellness into the curriculum, as we believe that, you know, one of the ways in order to change the narrative is to integrate into the narrative into what we currently have. And so we were part, and thank you, Karen, you were part of that series with me in terms of developing the content for that, because we spoke about a value system, which was a core thing within the process of cyber wellness, having a strong value system, and how that value system actually translates into how we explore the online environment and how we identify in the online environment, particularly around young girls, even young boys, and how we are able to strategize and give the proper tools to be able to manage the space and to be responsible within the space as well.
So to both of you, in terms of that, how do you think we could help teachers more in terms of creating the awareness? So I suppose, removing some of the stigmatisms around only boys can do some things, and sometimes I think as teachers we don't even realize that we have a bias. So what are the kinds of things do you think we could do to help people overcome sort of their internal biases, or perhaps the areas where they're not even realizing that they have a perception and are imposing that on their kids or transferring it to the children? Do you have any thoughts around that?
That's what has been so exciting about the STEAM approach that we discovering and unpacking, is if you say to boys, or if you say to a group of children, who wants to be an engineer, it's most likely boys that put up their hands. But if you had to pose the same question, saying to the group, who wants to find a solution to clean the oceans, or you just add that element of design and bring in the arts, it just changes the whole concept, and you have a far more girls raising their hands to enter that field. So that's where the arts comes in. It seems to be to bring in a far wider range of inclusion to the STEM subjects. So that would be my approach, and huge advocates of STEAM, the STEAM approach to learning.
Thanks. Gafieza, did you raise your hand just now?
Yeah, I also, what you're speaking about, Karen, is around the stereotype threat. This lends itself to imposter syndrome, because the stereotype threat, if I can just give it in a nutshell, is basically where someone is worried about conforming to a negative stereotype within their social group. In this case, it can be the gender identity. And this can be present itself more harmful because, and research has even suggested that it can actually affect your performance negatively. I read about a research study that was done around women's math performance around the stereotype threat, and it was actually done in, I think, in 1998. So the researchers divided our female participants into about two groups, and with the one study, they said with the female participants, they were asked to take a math test. So, but ahead of the test, one group was reminded of the stereotype that women are weaker at math than men, and the other group was not. So when the test was described as producing gender differences and the stereotype threat was high, women performed substantially worse than equally qualified men did. So the research found that, the women that were told basically that, listen, women are weaker at math than men, they completely underperformed within the test, while the other group had actually excelled. So this just tells us once again that the language we use and the way we actually present that value to our girls and even to our boys is that we need to address the issue in such a way that we base it on the fact that we want to propel them towards something. Like you were saying, even if you're adding the design element in order to gain for young girls to be able to visualize what is possible for them. But the moment there's so much negative language that is also used around gender biases, and it's so ingrained. And I think one of the key things as teachers, and I do it for myself too, is just to check ourselves. We need to critically analyze and check the language that we are producing when we are expressing ourselves to other teachers as leaders within technology and e-learning. We are also engaging with young girls around this, because the language we use really shapes their thinking and their identity around it as well. And I mean, there's no wrongs in saying that, within e-learning like a boss, or something like that, e-learning like a girl. So we need to also create language where we are pushing the narrative towards women, as opposed to just trying to use it as a political forum to say, let's put the girls there. But it has to be consistent effort in order to do so.
Yeah, it's not just a once-off thing. It's a continual thing in terms of how we engage. I know from my point of view, sometimes when there've been parent meetings, the parents, the men would shake the men's hands and not shake yours as the woman, even though you were chairing the meeting. And it's just like standing up and saying, hello, I'm here, and putting your hand out and learning to, like, you can be proactive. And I think in terms of younger women, seeing you do that, they realize, because children mimic what we do. So being the way you want to be treated, treating other people like that, I think really comes forward in all sorts of different ways and mannerisms in terms of how you interact with people and engage with them. Cheryl, from a Penreach point of view, you spoke about ECD. Does Penreach only focus on ECD in terms of that? Or are you, okay?
Sorry, I interrupted you. Yeah, right through. So ECD, look, our main focus is teacher training. So building capacity within teachers who will then empower and carry it through to learners in schools. And a lot of what we our team that do the training, we've got lots of girls, women on our team, and that's important too, as you say, the role models and being role models so that girls see girls in the field, you know, and I think that's important. But yeah, we from ECD, our impact from ECD right up to I think some of the people in my my training groups are 50, 60 plus. So a huge range of age groups, you know, and the interest is there. You know, everybody's very interested. It's something new. Everybody's looking at STEM. And yes, I think having the role models as girls, empowering girls. And yeah, I think that message is great.
In terms of that, Gafieza, and looking at eCulture, how does things like the new robotics and coding that may be coming in, that I know it's still a draft, but is there going to be a focus in terms of, I mean, the curriculum itself is quite nice in that it includes internet safety and applications and all those kinds of things. So, I mean, a bit of the stuff that you've already been addressing quite proactively within your space. But in terms of robotics and engineering, do you think there's sort of different things that we could focus on in terms of that? Because often I think when we think of robotics, the actual concepts and career opportunities around that are not explored. And do you think that's something we could begin to start making the children aware of as well?
Absolutely, Karen. You know, I was thinking about this earlier on in terms of that integration into curriculum. And, you know, our national curriculum already embeds tech within our STEM subjects. We know this. We've also implemented the STEAM element, bringing arts into it to an extent as well. But, you know, we need to also, like Cheryl was also saying around, you know, from a young age already, we're viewing tech as very hard science, very analytical. We are seeing it only through from an ICT perspective in terms of lesson-based as well. And therefore we're restricting tech largely to STEM subject, which narrows the industry really. And I think this, the industry itself is defined by its growth potential. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I believe that, you know, STEM, STEAM, it's got a large growth potential. And while it's logical and analytical skills that are highly beneficial in tech, but creative skills and creative thinking and the ability to reason, whether it's deductive reasoning or inductive reasoning, it's crucial as well. And so we have to look at, you know, like the child or the learner, girl or boy for that matter, who scores high in English or other languages, and how that might show fluency in other coding languages, for instance.
Exactly.
You know, or children who do well in history and what kind of particular talent they may have, trawling a wide range of sources to find solutions to problem, having research analytical skills, and bringing in the artists that can show attention to detail through coding, through robotics. It's more than just memorization. It's more than just, it's about creating that complexity within our various, I'm saying languages because I'm a language teacher, within our various subjects. And we need to think about how we can nurture these skills, which might one day be invaluable in a high-tech company, or how can we conceptualize technology through robotics and coding in an interdisciplinary way to make it more accessible to everyone. So I think our education sector, our economic sector, will largely benefit from young girls or learners or children that is able to readdress how technology can be integrated into the curriculum. And teachers need to, from a WCED perspective, we are bringing coding into the schools. We have coding clubs in our schools. We are looking at coding and robotics as well in our schools. So these things are already been placed within our schools, but it's really about how do we reimagine the use of these technologies as opposed to just developing like the coding and the very simplification around what is presented to us, but really taking it to another level.
I agree with you completely in terms of that. So, I mean, I suppose my background is, for most of my life, I've taught design and technology. And for me, the really magic thing about design and technology is that design process, where you're starting to get people to really think and be creative, but at the same time to be reflective and to say, what I've made, is it okay? How can I improve it? So really getting them to think. So building that is now part of the robotics and coding curriculum. When I saw that the other day, I thought, this is so exciting. Because at least we're not going to lose it, because we have lost it with science and technology being incorporated. And so that for me was exciting. And the other day I was saying to some teachers, like, yes, you've got applications and you've got to learn the fundamentals, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. You've now got to go into these amazing things where you can be creative. And when I was in India, I saw the most amazing things in terms of spreadsheets. It was actually 2 girls' examples that the principal showed. And it was Diwali. And the children had to use maths calculations or statements to create a picture in a spreadsheet. And so here was it just with math statements. So you really had to understand the maths. And there's this beautiful drawing of, I suppose, the Ganges River, but with candles floating on it, all made out of maths. And another child had done the whole school badge, including the motto, all just with maths. And it's saying that's really taking it just to the next level. And that's what we want. We want teachers to be exploring with the technology, that it becomes fun. And the other thing that I touched on, Cheryl, you might have some input in terms of careers. So taking these students and making them aware of careers around technology. For me, the robotics, you've got these exciting careers like materials development, and the creativity around that in terms of saying to girls, you can become an engineer, but it doesn't mean that you have to build bridges. There's so many other fields of engineering where you can be creative and looking at alternative things. So Cheryl, I don't know if you've got anything to add there.
When you see, I just think education is kind of being turned on its head in the last year or two, and everybody's rethinking and reimagining how things should be or could be. And it's breaking the wall barriers between subjects. It's bringing it together and saying, let's embrace it holistically. Let's look at education holistically. How do we see education around us in our everyday lives? It's making it real. It's finding solutions to real world problems. And I think that's the way it's just intertwining and when you just look at so career-wise, it's saying we're not looking at one career. Our future workforce is I'm not just a doctor. I can be so much more. You know what I mean? So it's just intertwining of careers and possibilities of what I could be and want to be. So yeah, I mean that's so coming from education from early up, just making those dreams. I can be and I will be whatever I want to be kind of mentality.
So Tony says an interesting comment. So I've got a thought I'd like to spot, but maybe one of you also has. Making clothes is nothing like building a robot. I should know I've built one. So I don't know if one of you want to make a comment over here.
I can say that I've made clothes though. And making clothes is not easy either.
So I suppose what I'm trying to say around that is that in terms of engineering and the actual development of the fabric and the kinds of research that's been going into materials. So for example, where they're trying to mimic the tensile strength of a spider web and then taking that and translating it into how does it become a space type material because of its strength and durability. So yes, it might not be clothing, but maybe, Tony, it's the development of the material for like smart clothing and interesting things like that. So it's the thinking that we want the kids to do, to be aware of, and then saying to them that your careers are limitless. Don't limit yourself to a single space. Cheryl, I don't know if you want to say something.
I mean, it's. I think it's breaking down the confines of saying it's boys that build robots and it's girls that do clothing. I think it's that mentality that we're trying to redress, and just say, I can also do robots, and because I'm a girl, it doesn't mean I have to do clothing. That kind of thing, So it's
yes,
not
I
saying
can also
one's
do
better
robots.
than the other. Yeah. So it's not saying that it's for one specific, it can be for anyone. And yes. It's not meaning that if you're good at robots, you're not good at clothing. You could be good at both, So yeah.
I remember as a child, because I was a girl, I was never allowed to do woodwork and metalwork. Oh, and I was so envious of the boys who could go to metalwork and woodwork, and I had to go to sewing. I was always in trouble unpicking my sewing. So yeah. So I think it's breaking down the stereotypes, and it would be interesting to see what happens in the technical schools, and are girls actually encouraged to go into those fields, and if they do choose it, is it okay? Sort of what's the reaction within the school space around those traditional fields? I know the TVET colleges, the numbers are still really low, and you don't get many women going into those fields. And maybe for me, it's like starting the conversation and just saying, let's have the chat in terms of exploring these stereotypes, which we just take for granted. In terms of your own spaces and looking at the children, and also, Gafieza, you mostly work with teachers now, but in terms of, or so do you, Cheryl, hey? So in terms of exploring and saying to those kinds of people, have you seen some examples of where things are really changing and where people are actually sort of saying, let's see how we can explore these and take away some of the boundaries or some of the sort of parameters that they might have had?
Who's going?
So I'll pop up this picture. Perhaps you want to talk to that, Cheryl?
Yeah, so this picture was taken today. We're working with First Lego with the ISET program from UNISA, and we're doing some EV3 coaching with the children. And that's what I was saying earlier. It's just you see that passion from girls and boys alike, and somewhere along the road, that passion with girls gets lost, and that's what we want to work with. We want to so it's bringing it in from a young age, nurturing that love, that natural love, and not saying putting anybody in a box. It's if taking the natural abilities of whoever and saying go with it, grow with your passions, whoever you are. And yeah, so this was a shot of today's work at one of the schools that we're working in with robotics. I've got another.
Do you want the other picture now too?
Yeah.
Is it changing?
There we go. That's a young group. This is a grade R group, working with measuring blocks, bringing in the maths, the science, and just they were. I don't even know what they were creating here, but I just thought it was such a cute little picture just to show for today's discussion. Just all little girls and just loving the space they're in, and yeah, just
they're beautiful photos. Yeah,
very much.
Gafieza, have you got anything you want to add?
Now, I just wanted to latch on to what you were saying earlier on about, speaking about the stereotypes, and we're speaking about all of those things that, we need to empower like young girls and women by showing them women that lead companies that deliver technology, and not just about how they're using technology to support learning. And, or women that's creating e-learning opportunities or creating e-learning platforms, or women that's providing technology consulting like yourself, Karen. So like these, we're showing from a very teacher-based perspective also to our young girls. And this also, they want to be able to see women at the forefront because like you said now, Cheryl, that a lot of young girls are leaving or they're losing interest. And we can't deny that those stereotypes play a part. We can't deny that cultural norms and modesty norms play a part, that imposter syndrome might play a part as well. So these kind of things also need to be addressed. And in order for us to bridge over that, we need to acknowledge that these things will come into play and will affect the way the future of the industry with regard to gender equality. And we know that naturally modesty norms can prevent women from talking about their achievements, while others might feel more comfortable about it. And cultural barriers that you mentioned at the beginning can also where women can fall prey to that because they might not be able to do personal branding well enough or self-promote well enough. And these are one of the 6 cultural differences that can cause discomfort for people across the world. So we need to speak to these things and teach learners, young girls in particular, how to self-promote, how to go beyond the imposter syndrome, that because it can have a very strong pernicious effect on them. It prevents people from seeing their remarkable abilities, and therefore they feel they're not good enough. And I know I've suffered from imposter syndrome throughout my career as a teacher at the career that I'm in right now. I mean, even Maya Angelou suffered imposter syndrome because it has been so inbred in our socialization that we are left only to a certain type of thinking, that we question our value when we get to a certain point. And let's be honest, I think one of the things about STEM and STEAM, it even makes me feel a little bit intimidated. Because, and I work in technology, because the concept of STEAM and STEM, when we speak about science, technology, and maths, our entire upbringing, the socialization of that upbringing was that academic subjects, that strong candidates. Those are the kids that get A's, you feel automatically like you don't fit into that bracket. So we need to also address that. because young girls that might not feel as comfortable with math subjects or with science. I was terrible at physics. I don't even know why I did it. But but the fact is that you did it because there was a socialization, there's a stigma attached to not doing those subjects. And so now you're placing those subjects ahead of people, of young girls, young boys, and the first thing they think, you might be thinking is, wait, we don't fit into that bracket. I don't do that well in maths. I don't do that well in science. I don't do that well in technology. And automatically, all that imposter syndrome, that stereotypical thinking pushes them down, and they're like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And we need to address the value of how the empathy behind our teaching when it comes to integrating coding and robotics into the curriculum, because we're not addressing that element. How do we address imposter syndrome in our kids? But we also need to tackle it ourselves as individuals.
And I agree, the tackling as individuals is a huge thing. If I just think of the workshops I've done in the last few months around computational thinking and around robotics, and teachers are just petrified. And when you say foundation phase teachers, they are saying no, and showing them that actually lots of the computational thinking skills they're doing already, but they're just not aware of it. So the terminology is different. So creating that kind of awareness has really, at the end of the sessions, the people go, oh, yes, I can see how I can start using that now. And then when you start saying, okay, well, think about how robots work, and that you're working from a structure and an electrical system and a mechanical system, and then you've got your coding system. So slowly build that up and understand what kind of mechanisms you could use with your babies, and that you could do simple wheels and axles, and you can do levers, and you can be getting children to understand how to work with different materials and making things that move. And then slowly add an electrical system, and then add an electronic and a coded system. So you could do the same in what you do with the children if we got teachers to realize that you can begin where you are at and slowly build your own knowledge, and effectively get the children to understand the same way, to remove your own fears.
And I want to add to that, Karen, that just one thing is that also respect the pace at which you are working and at which your learners are adapting, because we are so urgent in teaching practice. We are so urgent in terms of ticking off the box, in terms of saying that we have accomplished this. But it's so important that we regulate the pace for ourselves and for our learners, so that overwhelm doesn't kick in, that intimidation, that threat of I don't know enough doesn't kick in. And learning to pace ourselves is something that we really, I think it's one of the greatest challenges of life.
That's true. Cheryl, would you like to add?
Yeah, and it's I'm just thinking of a particular ECD focused area. We bringing in the STEAM was a story about coming to a birthday party, and different characters. One character in particular was a robot, and he had to blow up all these balloons, but he didn't have lungs. And so how could we find a solution to help the robot to blow up, to put it in these balloons? And so the whole experimentation of bicarb, and so the whole lesson went around this storyfied thing, where eventually the bicarb and vinegar, the whole experimentation. So children love experiments. No matter who, I mean, children are just naturally drawn to the hands-on education, experimenting, playing with, seeing how it works. So it's just the teacher intentionally facilitating and bringing in those things. We kind of drawn to the hands-on lessons if we have time. And we just need to realize the impacts and how children are drawn to that hands-on learning. That is primary to the lesson, and not the handwritten and the theoretical side. It's touching, it's feeling, it's experimenting with, and that's where the STEAM comes in.
That's so exciting. So ladies, I'm so grateful to both of you for agreeing to chat this evening and for sharing your views. As we finish up the evening, how would you like to close? So I'd love a closing kind of comment from either of, or both of you, whoever would like to go first.
I'll go. So if you are a woman in tech, whether you are a teacher that's implementing ICT, whether you are a woman working within technology and e-learning, make it your own mission to destroy the stereotypes through your leadership. Have courage not to stand idly while casual or overt sexism occurs around you with regard to technology, with regard to e-learning, with regard to the entire system. And more importantly, make sure that girls and young women get to meet you. I think there's also a way to get rid of our own imposter syndromes, to know the value that we have in this cycle, in this narrative. Share our successes and share your challenges. Do your part to encourage women to be part of the STEM fields. I think that's the strongest message that I can send forth, because I think it's something that I tell myself all the time. Just be present, be intentional, and, you know, try to self-promote as tough as it can be in order to help others to see the value of the work that is being done, so that it can, you know, encourage young girls to be able to do the same.
Oh, that's beautiful. Cheryl.
Yeah, I think my message is to teachers, to say don't be afraid of STEAM. Play with your children, keep your lessons hands-on, and bring in all those geeky things. They're not geeky, it's fun. Kids find it fun, and embrace that in your teaching.
So I think, just in terms of what both of you have said, I agree completely. I think we are role models as women, both to the girls and to the boys. Because if the boys see you as a confident, strong person, but also somebody, if you don't know, who is honest and says, come on, let's learn together. So that you're not afraid. We don't have to know everything, and we can go on a learning journey with our children, I think is really important. But being ourselves and being comfortable from where we're at, I think is really, really important. I think as women, we can be role models to all the children that we come into contact with. And I think that's also really important, that it's not just to the girls, but it's to the girls and the boys in terms of who we engage with, including how you interact with your staff members at school, and how the relationship you have with the other teachers. The children see how you behave and interact from that point of view. And so to everybody tonight, I just want to say thank you for your comments and for participating. We really enjoyed the discussion. Ladies, thank you so, so much for being here. And I wish you all a fantastic evening. I'm going to end the session. Good night. Thanks, everyone.
You.
Bye.